Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam.
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha
Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Shri
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhashatya Deshatarine.
Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam
Paramananda
Paramananda
Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Lord Chaitanya, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Chandra, and all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya.
So here we are in the 12th chapter of Madhya Lila, the cleansing of the Guṇḍicā temple. This chapter is divided into various sections, and we have completed the first section where we saw the devotees petitioning to Lord Caitanya Mahāprabhu to show some mercy on Prataprudra. Prataprudra was getting very restless, and he was thinking to the extent of giving up his Rajpad, the kingdom and everything, because he was thinking that this is the thing which is stopping me, or rather I am not able to associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because of that. So what use is all this for? So he's going to that extent also, and all the devotees on his behalf is repeatedly requesting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now we will get into the next section, verse 38 to 56. Ramanand appeals Lord to meet Prataprudra. Ramananda Raya Yabe Dakhina Aila Prabhu Sange Rahite Raja Ke Nivedila.
After returning from his service in South India, Ramananda Rai requested the king to allow him to remain with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when Ramananda Rai retired from his service, he requested King Prataprudra that he may remain with Lord Chaitanya and he may serve Lord Chaitanya. So we already saw that Lord very happily agreed to that, gave him full retirement benefits, full salary. He would continue to draw. So Lord facilitated his request.
King.
The king facilitated his request to be with the Lord.
तबे राजा संतोषिता हारे आज्ञा दिला आपनी मिलना लागी साधिते लागीला. When Ramananda Rai requested the king to allow him to stay with the Lord, the king immediately gave him permission with great satisfaction. As for the king himself, he began to solicit Ramananda Rai to make a meeting arrangement. So whatever Ramananda wanted, king immediately sanctioned, and he was requesting that somehow or other, if he can get one meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu Mahakripa kare na tumhare मोरे मेली बारे अवश्य शादी तहारे.
The king told Ramananda Rai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful to you. Therefore, please solicit my meeting with him without fail. So we understand here that Ramananda Rai was very dear to Lord Chaitanya. The king wanted darshan of the Lord, his personal association, and the Lord was not willing to give his direct association to the king. The Lord was not willing to give direct association to the king. So here, king had approached the Lord's very dear friend. And here he is giving the logic. So the king Prataprudra is very intelligent and very well educated in spiritual science. So he's informing Ramananda Rai that you have received so much of mercy from Lord Chaitanya, and therefore if you will take up my case, then definitely Lord will offer me his darshan without fail. So same thing we see in beautiful verses of Guru Ashtakam. We sing in the morning, Mangala Aarti time, we sing Yasya Prasadat Bhagavad Prasado Yasya Prasadat Na Gati Kato Kuto Api. So there Vishnu Chakati Thakur he writes this verse, composes this verse, and he informs us that when we receive when we satisfy the spiritual master, the Lord naturally becomes satisfied. And by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of Lord being satisfied. So when we please the devotee of the Lord, and specifically if we please the great Vaishnavas, the spiritual master, if we please, we receive dual benefit. We not only receive the blessings of the devotee, we also receive the blessings of the Lord. So Ramananda Rai was very, the king Prataprudra was very well educated spiritually, and he knew the secrets of spiritual life and progressing in spiritual life.
एक संगे दुई जना क्षेत्र यावे आइला रामानंद राय तबे प्रभु रे मिलिला. The king and Ramananda Rai returned together to Jagannath Kshetra, and Sri Ramananda Rai met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada prema bhakti janala rajarya prasanga pana aiche kahe bar bar.
At that time, Ramananda Rai informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the ecstatic love of the king. Indeed, as soon as there was some opportunity, he repeatedly informed the Lord about the king. So here Ramananda Rai, of course, understanding the king is a great devotee and he has so much of ecstatic, spontaneous love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and for Jagannath. So whenever he had an opportunity, wherever there was a possibility, he repeatedly glorified the king, King Prataprudra, in front of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Raja Mantri Ramananda Vyavare Nipuna Raja Priti Kahi Dravai Prabhu Ramana. Sri Ramananda Rai was indeed a diplomatic minister for the king. His general behavior was very expert, and simply by describing the king's love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually softened the Lord's mind. So now King Prataprudra had such strong recommendation. So this king, he had this minister as Ramananda Rai, and Ramananda Rai is very pleased by the king's behavior. Ramananda Rai is very dear to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So if anyone could convince Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to meet the king, probably Ramanand Rai was the best bet. So somehow Ramanand Rai was very pleased by the king, not because he gave him whatever pension and monetary benefit, but because he could see the genuine love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the heart of the king. So that is why he was like trying to convince Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he is using all what he had. So here, as it is says that he was a diplomatic minister for the king. So he was actually using that diplomacy in the service of the Lord. So that is devotional service, that whatever we have, we engage it in the service of the Supreme Lord. So that diplomacy was used. Otherwise, in the political affair, if we see, so diplomacy is used there. In day-to-day life, it is not something which is very valued and cherished. But here, even that he was using to convince Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to meet Ramananda Rai.
उत्कंठाते प्रताप रुद्र नारे रोहि बारे रामानंद साधी लेना प्रभु रे मिली बारे. Maharaj Pratap Rudra, in great anxiety, could not endure not seeing the Lord. Therefore, Ramananda Rai, by his diplomacy, arranged a meeting with the Lord for the king. So Maharaj Pratap Rudra was in great anxiety. He could not bear the separation from the Lord. And Ramananda Rai, as an expert devotee, the word used in the previous was Nipun, Vyavhar Nipun. He was very, very expert in dealing with people. And so by using his diplomacy, arranged a meeting with the Lord for the king. Now we need to understand that this diplomacy is not necessarily a negative word. Usually diplomacy is understood to be it tends to have a negative connotation. But when it is used in the service of devotees, when it is used in the service of the Lord, then it becomes devotional service. Ramananda Prabhu Paya Kailani Vedana Eka Bara Pratap Rudre Dekha Charana.
Shri Ramananda Rai frankly requested Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please show your lotus feet to the king at least once. So others were hesitant, but Ramananda Rai, he said that please, directly he is telling that please meet the king once. So that is how he is directly informing the king, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
And this also shows the intimacy which Ramananda Rai enjoys with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how close he is to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he could actually frankly present this request.
Prabhu kahe Ramananda kaha vichariya Raja ke milite yuyai sannyasi hana.
Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, my dear Ramananda, you should make this request after duly considering whether it is befitting for a sannyasi to meet a king. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, this is the etiquette for a sannyasi. It is the etiquette not to associate with a materialist, with a sense enjoyer. And king is a person, naturally because he has so much opulence at his disposal, the king would be enjoying his senses. So it is not appropriate for a sannyasi to meet a big sense enjoyer, somebody like a king. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking Ramananda that, have you considered this? Whether it is befitting for a person in my ashram to meet a king?
Raja Ramilane Bhikshu Kera Dui Loka Nasha Paraloka Rahu Loke Kare Upahasa. If a mendicant meets a king, this world and the next world are both destroyed for the mendicant. Indeed, what is there to say of the next world? In this world, people will joke if a sannyasi meets a king. So here we see that the king was considered a materialist person. So for the sannyasi to meet a king was not appropriate. I mean, current time, the things are completely different and we see so many spiritualists or so-called religionists getting into politics. But here we see what standard Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is following. So he is telling that it is not appropriate to meet and now and in the next world. Next world means after, like the next body, wherever the person goes. So this world as well as the next, both are destroyed if the king meets a materialist person. If the sannyasi meets a materialist person.
Yeah. The reason is that the sannyasi has decided to, he has cast away the material life. He has left that material life behind him, and now is the last phase of his life in which he wants to focus on devotional service to the Lord so that he can perfect his goal of human life and he can go back to the spiritual world. So that is the whole objective. And in middle of all that, if he meets somebody, like a king which inspires some material desires in him, and then the whole effort that he has taken all along will get lost. And then because of those reawakening of those material desires, next life also will be very troublesome for him.
रामानंद कहे तुमी ईश्वर स्वतंत्र कार्य तोमार भाय तुमी नह परतंत्र. Ramanand replied, "My lord, you are the supreme independent personality. You have nothing to fear from anyone because you are not dependent on anyone." So Ramananda is reminding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that you are not an ordinary mendicant. You are not an ordinary sannyasi. You are the Supreme Lord Himself and you are completely independent. Prabhu kahe ami manush ashrame sannyasi kaya mano vakya vyavahare bhayavasi.
When Ramananda Rai addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected, saying, "I am not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but an ordinary human being. Therefore, I must fear public opinion in 3 ways, with my body, mind, and words." So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described as Channa Avatar or a hidden incarnation. If you read scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, he is not different from the Supreme Lord. He is Krishna himself, but he has come here as a devotee of the Lord, and therefore Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is correcting Ramananda Rai. No, I am an ordinary person, and therefore I must protect this ashram of sannyas in which I am, and I must fear public opinion. Nowadays, if you see, people don't really care so much about public opinion. If you feel like it, do it. If you think it's okay for you, if it gives you happiness, then you can do it. You don't really have to worry about what people say. But here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that I fear public opinion, and in 3 ways. Whatever actions I do with my body, whatever actions, thoughts I have in my mind, or whatever words I speak, all 3 of them should not be done in a way which for which the general public may criticize. So he is being very, very conscious of his public conduct.
Shukla vastre masi bindu yaichana lukaya sanyasira alpa chidra sarvaloke gaya. As soon as the general public finds a little fault in the behavior of a sannyasi, they advertise it like wildfire. A black spot of ink cannot be hidden on a white cloth. It is always very prominent. So like if somebody is wearing nice white shirt or kurta and there is one tiny little stain on that. So that stain can be seen from far also because it becomes very visible because of the contrast. So similarly, he is telling, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that a black spot of ink cannot be hidden on a white cloth. It is always prominent, and that is why a small little fault also, if a sannyasi makes, then it becomes blown up. They advertise it like wildfire. So a sannyasi must be very, very careful. Raya kahe kata papir kariya vyahati Ishwar sevaka tomar bhakta gajapati.
Ramananda Rai replied, "My dear Lord, you have delivered so many sinful people. This King Prataprudra, the king of Orissa, is actually a servitor of the Lord and your devotee." So, although the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving very sound logic considering the ashram that he is in, Ramananda Rai is also giving very sound reason here that, Lord, you have delivered people like Jagai and Madai. They were, what sin was there which they had not committed? You met them, you delivered them. And here we are not talking about any sinful or any sense gratifier. He is a king of this state. He is a great servitor of Lord Jagannath, of Lord Krishna, and he is your devotee.
Prabhu
Kahe purna yaiche dugdhira kalasa Sura bindu pate keha na kare parasha.
Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, there may be much milk in a big pot, but if it is contaminated by a drop of liquor, it is untouchable. The king certainly possesses all good qualities, but simply by taking up the name king, he has infected everything. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that I agree to it that he is a wonderful devotee, but then he is also the king. And I cannot really compromise there. तथापि तुम्हारा यदि महाग्रहया तबे आनी मिला तुम्ही ताहर तनया आत्मा वै जायत पुत्र ए शास्त्रवाणी पुत्रेरा मिलने ये ना मिलिबे आपानी.
But if you are still very eager for the king to meet with me, please first bring his son to meet me. It is indicated in the revealed scriptures that the son represents the father. Therefore, the son's meeting with me would be just as good as the king's meeting with me. So now Lord has very clearly understood that Ramananda Rai is very insistent and he is having a great desire for inspiring the Lord to meet the king. So now Lord has found through the means of scriptures and another way in which this can be fulfilled, this desire of Ramananda Rai can be fulfilled. And what is that? Atma vai jayate putra. The son, the scriptures explain that the son represents the father. Now, as a sannyasi, I cannot meet the king, but I can definitely meet the son. And the son represents the father. So if I meet the son, it is as good as meeting the father. So finally, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given a solution to solve this predicament.
So the next section, 57 to 71, we'll see Lord Chaitanya's mercy on Pratap Rudra's son. Tabiraya sab raja re kahila Prabhu agya tanra putra lana aila. Ramananda Rai then went to inform the king about his talks with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and following the Lord's orders brought the king's son to see him.
The prince, just entering upon his youth, was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. The prince was dressed in yellow cloth, and there were jeweled ornaments decorating his body. Therefore, anyone who saw him would remember Lord Krishna. Seeing the boy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately remembered Krishna. Meeting the boy in ecstatic love, the Lord began to speak. So here in these couple of verses, the son of King Pratap Rudra, the prince, his beauty is described that he was just entering his youth, which means he was there in his late teens. He was just entering the youth. He was very, very beautiful, very good looking. His bodily complexion was blackish. He had large lotus eyes. He was wearing yellow cloth. Now, if you see that all of this is very similar to the form of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna's bodily hue is blackish like a dark monsoon cloud. His Lord has large, beautiful lotus eyes. So, and Krishna wears yellow dhoti. So there were so many similarities here, and everyone was reminded of Lord Krishna by seeing this boy. He Mahabhagavata Haradashani Vrajendra Nandana Smriti Haya Sarvajane.
Here is a great devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, upon seeing him, everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, son of Maharaj Nanda. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was so happy seeing him, and he declares what? That this prince is a great devotee. And why is he a great devotee? Because just by his darshan, just by seeing him, everybody is reminded of Rajendra Nandan or the Supreme Lord Krishna himself. So that is why he becomes a great devotee. Kritartha hailanami haradashane
Eta bali punah tare kaila alingane. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I have become very much obligated just by seeing this boy. After saying this, the Lord again embraced the prince.
Prabhu sparshe raja putrer vaila prema visha Sveda kampa ashru stamba pulaka vishesha.
As soon as the prince was touched by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested themselves in his body. These symptoms included perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. So here was this prince, an innocent boy, and by the touch of Lord Chaitanya, he developed love for God. And all these symptoms of that ecstatic love immediately manifested in him. All these Sweda, Kampa, Ashru, Stamba, Pulaka. So all these symptoms of perspiration, trembling, tears, they just appeared in this young boy, this prince.
Krishna Krishna kahe nache karaya rodana Tandra bhagya dekhi slagha kare bhakta gana. The boy began to cry and dance and he chanted Krishna Krishna. Upon seeing his bodily symptoms and his chanting and dancing, all the devotees praised him for his great spiritual fortune. Tabe Mahaprabhu Tandre Dharya Karahila Nitya Asi Amai Miliha Agya Dila.
At that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calmed the youth and ordered him to come there daily to meet him. So, great fortune.
What a mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not ready to meet the father, and to the son, just by meeting him once, he is giving him an order that you come and meet me daily. Vidaya Narayana Raja Putra Lana Raja Sukha Paila Putre Cheshta Dekhiya. Ramanand Rai and the boy then departed from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramanand took him back to the king's palace. The king was very happy when he heard of his son's activities. Putre alingana kari prema vishta haila sakshat parashayena Mahaprabhu paila.
Just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love, just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. From then on, the fortunate prince was one of the most intimate devotees of the Lord. So here we saw something similar when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went on the South India tour. He would embrace a devotee, a person, and then he will develop love for God. He will start chanting, and then Lord will say, now you go to your village, you gather your family members, you inform anyone and everyone about chanting the holy name, and this villager will go back to his village, singing and chanting, develops love of God, and then whomever he will embrace, that person also will develop love for God, and then the whole village became a village of Vaishnavas. So here we see that just on the previous day, this prince was an ordinary prince, an ordinary boy. I mean, just, yes, a prince. But now, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, he immediately became what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called him Mahabhagavat, the greatest of devotees. So this is how miraculously the mercy of Lord Chaitanya acts, and therefore we say Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gora Tushe Namaha. So Lord Chaitanya therefore is called the Mahavadanyaya incarnation, the most munificent, the most merciful of all incarnations.
Emat Mahaprabhu Bhakta Gana Sanghe Nirantara Krida Kare Sankirtana Range. Thus Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted in the society of his pure devotees, performing his pastimes and spreading the Sankirtan movement. Emat Nana Range Dina Kata Gela Jagannathe Ratha Yatra Nikata Haila.
In this way, the Lord passed some days in great jubilation. Then the car festival of Lord Jagannath approached. So soon the Rath Yatra is about to happen.
So now we are entering into a very important, interesting and inspiring section. Verse number 72 to 135, it talks about Guṇḍicā marjan. So Guṇḍicā is that temple, I think we discussed in the last session, Guṇḍicā is that temple where when the Rath Yatra begins in Jagannath Puri, and then Lord of the universe, Jagannath, along with his brother Baldev and sister Subhadra, they come on a chariot and they come to this other temple which is known as Guṇḍicā, and Jagannath stays there for 7 days. So this is the place where Jagannath stays for 7 days. And so this temple, otherwise there is no pratishtha, no puja happens there in Guṇḍicā temple just for those 7 days, because it is the residence of Jagannath himself. So this temple needs mega cleaning every year when the Jagannath Rath is arriving. So Guṇḍicā marjan means cleaning. So actually Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, along with his devotees, he organizes this marjanam festival, Guṇḍicā cleaning festival, just before the Rath Yatra. So this section describes that pastime.
Prathame Kashi Mishre Prabhu Bolaila Padicha Patra Sarva Bhaume Bolana Anila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all called for Kashi Mishra, then for the superintendent of the temple, then for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Teen jana pashe Prabhu hasiya kahila Guṇḍicā mandira marjan seva maginila.
When these 3 people came before the Lord, he begged them for permission to wash the temple known as Guṇḍicā. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire was, that he wanted to clean this Guṇḍicā temple. So he called those 3 important people, and that is what he requests them.
Padicha kahe ami sab sevak tomara ye tomara ichha se kartavya amara. Upon hearing the Lord's request for permission to wash the Guṇḍicā temple, the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, "My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever you desire is our duty to perform." Now please, we have to understand that these are all the top personalities. The superintendent of Jagannath temple, we have Kashi Mishra, we have Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And what is the request Lord is presenting? That he wants to personally clean the Guṇḍicā temple. So it was a very unique request, and let's see what Padicha has to say. Visheshe Rajara Agya Hanache Amare Prabhu Agya Ye Se Shigra Karibare.
The king gave a special order for me to do without delay whatever your lordship orders. So the king himself is so very careful about fulfilling all the instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he had accordingly instructed everyone. Toma yogya seva nahe mandir marjana eka lila kara ye tomara mana.
My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting you. Tomare yogya seva nahe mandir marjana. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. Kintu ghat sammarjani bahut chahiye agya deha aji sab iha ani diye.
To wash the temple, you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore, order me. I can immediately bring all these things to you. Now, those of us who have not been to Jagannath Puri and to Guṇḍicā temple, so though this temple is deserted and there is no worship happens, but it's a huge temple. So it actually requires lots and lots of people and lots of resources also to clean that. It is not ordinary cleaning which is being described. It's a huge temple. So that is what he is telling, that to wash the temple you may need many water pots and broom. So I will arrange all these things.
Especially the way Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will clean every inch of it.
Nutaneka shata ghata shata samarjani
Paricha aniya dila Prabhu richa jani. As soon as the superintendent understood the desire of the Lord, he immediately delivered 100 new water pots and 100 brooms for sweeping the temple. Now in our house we may have one broom. Here he has arranged 100 water pots and 100 brooms.
Aradine prabhate lanani jagana Shri haste sabara ange lepila chandana. So now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is preparing those devotees who would actually go for cleaning. And what he is saying, the next day early in the morning, Lord took his personal associates with him and with his own hands smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. So Mahaprabhu is teaching by his own personal example, as in how we need to respect our fellow devotees. So he's preparing them by smearing sandalwood pulp on their body. So sandalwood pulp is like chandan. It is very expensive and it is considered to be a great respect, like applying sandalwood to others' body. So this is how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he knows that these people are the resource which would be utilized in cleaning the temple, and the temple cleaning is happening because Jagannath himself would be coming. So it's direct service to the Supreme Lord. So when we are trying to serve the Supreme Lord, this is how we must be very careful about those who are engaged along with us in serving the Supreme Lord. So Mahaprabhu's, this is how he is setting the example.
And Lord was personally present. He did not order, okay, all of you go and clean. He was personally present right in the front.
Leaders lead from the front.
And receiving his personal associates, taking them and inspiring them.
Shri haste dila sabare ek marjani sabagana lana prabhu chalila apani. He then gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Guṇḍicā. Guṇḍicā mandire gela karite marjana prathame marjani lana karila shodhana.
In this way, the Lord and his associates went to cleanse the Guṇḍicā temple. At first, they cleansed the temple with the brooms. So that is a usual practice. First, we have to remove all the dry
dust,
dirt, or anything which is there, the straws and other things, that has to be removed with the broom.
Bhitar mandira upar sakala majila simhasana maji puna sthapana karila. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, the simhasan, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. So all these details are mentioned to show that how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually teaching us. So the Lord is teaching us that if we have to do some cleaning, what attitude we should have and how we should actually do that.
So cleaning not just the floor,
but the ceiling.
But up to the ceiling. So all 360 degree cleaning is there.
Chota bada mandir kaila marjana shodhana pache taiche shodhila Shri Jagamohana.
Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the Kirtan hall. So, as Sukiti was explaining earlier, that this was a very huge campus with a lot of buildings which had the temple, it had a bhog mandap, it had big buildings, it has small buildings, it has rooms. So all these temple buildings, they were all swept and they were all cleaned, and including the area between the temple and the Kirtan hall.
Charidike shata bhakta samarjani kare apani shodhena prabhu shikhana sabare. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing all around the temple, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct others. So this is this huge compound, and hundreds of devotees were involved in cleaning, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doing it himself, and he was also observing, supervising, and assigning certain areas as who should do what. So shall we stop here, because then we can continue the whole cleaning process in detail, which I don't think that we can complete in this session if we do that. So we will stop here, and it is very interesting and very exciting pastime, and there are a lot of lessons, lot of learnings in this section when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would supervise the cleaning. So we will catch up from here in the next week, because we want to complete the whole thing at one session. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.